Turkey goes to the ballot box for the second time in 5 months as President Tayyip Erdogan's AK party heads to a signal party majority. And violence continue in the West Bank with 2 separate attacks. The latest, a vehicular incident north of Hebron in which 3 Israeli border police officers were injured. And an investigation is underway after a Russian airliner crashed in the Sinai Peninsula, killing all 224 people on board. Egyptian and Russian authorities dismissed claims from Islamic State militants that they were responsible.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the news today. Turks went to the polls for the second time in 5 months in what is being billed as one of the country's most crucial elections in years. Preliminary results show that President Tayyip Erdogan's AK party appears to be heading to a sweeping win. With almost 95% of all votes counted, state-run media TV said the AK party had won nearly 50% of the votes. And right now with me, joining me here in the studio is Alon Liel, Israel's former ambassador to Turkey. Good evening.
Good evening.
And also Laura Wells, who is joining me via Skype, a journalist stationed in Istanbul. Good evening.
Good evening.
So, Laura, let's start with you. The latest updates from Turkey, and it seems that we can say a surprise. He won big time.
This is a great surprise to so many, and ultimately it will be President Erdogan's victory. He has been seeking a presidential system since the beginning of the Republic in 1923. It has been a parliamentary system. Right now, with about 98% of the votes in, the ruling AK party is slated to have about 317 seats. That's only 13 shy to have a referendum to vote on a presidential system. So this might be a really historic vote in history. And we may see big changes in the government going forward.
Explain to me a little bit about these big changes, because his hands were tight in the last few months. I mean, the hands of Erdogan. So what big changes are we talking about?
Well, he's been pursuing a presidential system for at least the past year. He became president in August of 2014. He had to resign from his own party. He is supposed to be completely impartial to each and every party, although he did campaign in the last election in June and certainly gave a lot of support to the AK party in this past campaign. So his idea of a presidential system doesn't look like, for instance, the one in the United States. He thinks that President Obama contends too much with Congress. He would like to have more powers than that. And certainly if he's going to be the architect of a presidential system and it does pass via referendum, we're looking at a new sort of presidential system, maybe even globally.
Yes, Laura, just stay with us because I want to ask here Alon Liel. Good evening again. So let's try to understand what just happened. Just for months now, we've been talking about the fact that Erdogan is losing power. Erdogan might lose his spot, and today it just seems that he's stronger than ever.
I think the big question mark was how will the Turkish voter interpret the war of the last 4 months? Because when the elections took place 5 months ago, on the 7th of June, the voter went to the polls with a peace atmosphere. There were peace talks with the Kurds. And this time he went to the ballot box in a war atmosphere. The question was, is the voter really worried that this war is threatening the security of Turkey, or is the voter of the belief that Erdogan created this tension in order to win the elections? And probably the Turkish voter opted for number one. He is afraid that this war is dangerous for the future of Turkey. You can see it from where Erdogan took the votes.
So we're talking basically about the same results and maybe the same path that Benjamin Netanyahu took here, scaring the people just minutes before going to the polls, before the ballot boxes are closed, and then just surprise, surprise, I'm winning again.
First of all, unbelievable similarity with the polls. all the polls in Israel were wrong, and the polls here, all of them were wrong. The difference is that Netanyahu did very dramatic statements on the day, one on the day of the election and one a day before, on the Palestinian state, not in his time and so on. Erdogan is working on it for months. I don't know if he created these circumstances, but the circumstances on the ground in Turkey in the last 4 months were war circumstances, and in a war situation, the public tends to unite.
War circumstances, though we're talking about terror on the streets of Turkey. We're talking
Also,
about the Kurds and the PKK taking responsibility about some of the attacks that happened there, and basically maybe the party that was bigger was the winner in the last elections. We are seeing it right now, losing a big loss, and maybe even going back not 5 months ago, but years ago.
This remains to be seen. But to add to this war situation, attacks by air on Kurdish bases outside Turkey, and in the last few weeks, attacks on ISIS and the arrests of ISIS activists inside Turkey. So the war situation was, one, against the Kurds, two, against ISIS, and I think with the elections coming close, he shifted more and more toward ISIS because there is a consensus against ISIS.
I want to ask you just in a few seconds about the cultural aspects of what will happen from now on in Turkey. But Laura, you're still with us, right?
Yes.
So, Laura, try to explain to me. We are talking about what was is what is going to be, which means that what? People don't care about the economy. People don't care about the refugee influx. People don't care about the situation, about the fighting with ISIS, about Turkey trying to topple Bashar al-Assad. All these things are not a criteria in this case?
Well, that's a great question. Let's look at how the other parties have done in this election. We saw HDP, the pro-Kurdish party, lose ground. They had 13% in the June 7th election. They're down to 10%. They barely cleared the threshold. The AK party historically has been very popular with the Kurds because it was the only party in history which really tried to make a rapprochement with the Kurds and the political Kurds, and they succeeded for a while. But President Erdogan put the kibosh on that in the spring. He said no. Even members of parliament had signed a treaty with the Kurds, and he said, I won't allow it. He was very upset with the Kurds after Kobane, and when at least 36 people died in the streets, when so many Kurds came out saying that the government was supporting ISIS or allowing the Kurds to fall to ISIS. So he has been very upset with them since. And he has said during this campaign that HDP is terrorist, that it supports PKK, the Kurdish separatist militia now fighting the government. Over 2,000 dead since the end of July. And certainly this has been weighing on a lot of people. And obviously, Turkish voters think that Turkey needs a strong man, as they say, to control the public and the security of the country. So I do think this was number one, certainly with the ISIS bombings, at least 3 since June, and also 2 attacks on Turkish soil this week, 2 police officers dying, 2 Syrian activists killed in their home in southern Turkey. This is weighing on a lot of people's minds, and they believe that Erdogan, who presents himself as the strongest man in Turkey, fits the bill, that he can do this.
Yes, Laura, just stay with us for a little bit more. Alon, I want to ask you, just a few days ago, we published here in I-24 News a report that the Italians are trying to pass a new gas line between Israel and between Egypt in order maybe to disconnect from Turkey. These elections right now showing that Erdogan is going to stay there and going to stay there for a long time. Can Israel or should Israel still be disconnected from Turkey?
It doesn't depend on Israel only, of course. It's mainly up to Erdogan. I think that in the last few months, especially since Lieberman left the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we could see Israel trying to build a certain rapprochement. There was not a positive reaction so far, but I think what will happen from now on is that we have Erdogan twice. We have a double Erdogan. We have him in the presidency, and we have him in the government. He creates the government, he appoints the government, and he sits in the presidency. He controls Turkey. He will try to move the executive powers to the presidency. But if he will behave as he did until the last election, he holds the Israeli or the Israeli-Palestinian portfolio in his hand or pocket, and he keeps running the show. Now, Erdogan is not free of mistakes, and you see his situation in the Middle East, but it's up to him mostly. And if he will decide, because of what's going on in Syria, and because of other reasons, especially if Iran is getting stronger in Syria, and Assad is saying to come closer to us, it will be very fast. It can happen because there is a wish in Israel to build a new friendship
and
again.
a new friendship with Turkey. Alon Liel, thank you very much for this. Laura, I'm still with you. And one more question to you. Laura, from what you're seeing in the, let's say, the atmosphere on the streets, do people really see that there are going to be any change in Turkey? And I'm talking about the cultural aspects. I'm talking about, is Turkey going to continue being more religious, less secular, and maybe less open to the rest of the world? Are these the things that the Turks are worried about?
Well, certainly critics of President Erdogan and AK Party say yes to all of the above that you just mentioned. But if we are to believe these results right now, then no, 50% of the population is not worried about it. They're more worried about security. And you'd mentioned the economy, and AK Party historically and still to this day during the campaign is more pro-economy than the opposition parties. Now, they haven't been in power for so long, so they are rather untested in the past 13 years. But if you look at their platforms and their rhetoric, they just don't want as much of an open economy as AK Party and President Erdogan.
Yes, Laura Wells, thank you very, very much for this. And of course, you will continue updating us during this evening. And we're going back to this region. Violence in the West Bank continues with 2 separate attacks. 3 Israeli border police officers were injured in a car ramming attack near Hebron. One of the officers was seriously injured and was sent to Jerusalem's Hadassah hospital for treatment. This just hours after a Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli security forces, also near Hebron, when he attempted to stab an IDF soldier. The IDF said the incident occurred during riots in the area and that no Israeli was wounded. And the latest violence comes as Israel on Sunday returned the bodies of 9 of Palestinian assailants to Palestinian Authority, something which it had delayed doing in the past few months. And right now with me in the studio, a senior Middle East analyst, Ali Waked. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
And so just before I'm continuing with you, let's go live to our I-24 News military correspondent, Shai Ben-Ari, who is in Gush Etzion. Shai, so the latest updates from you. Again, I can call it relatively calm, but it's what is calm in this region. Let's hear the latest updates from you.
Yes, Lucy, as you mentioned, you could still call it relative calm because we're talking about 2 incidents a day, and unfortunately, in the current situation, that is nothing out of the ordinary, unfortunately, in the past month or so in this region. Now that the violence is focused on this region and the surroundings, we're talking about Gush Etzion, and in this case, the area around the village of Beit Anun, slightly to the north of Hebron, slightly to the south of here. 2 incidents there today. The latest, of course, a vehicular attack with 3 people injured. You had a vehicle basically ramming into a group of border police soldiers who were stationed near the entrance to Beit Anun. 1 person was initially characterized as seriously injured, now characterized as moderately injured. 2 others lightly injured, including a female police officer. We're talking about an incident where, according to one media report, the perpetrator has now actually turned himself in to Israeli authorities. That has yet to be confirmed by Israeli military or police authorities. if this was another case of perhaps somebody turning themselves in and then claiming it was an accident, that has happened in the past before, I would say regarding this particular incident, that would seem unlikely, considering the amount of incidents like this that have happened in this region. Of course, there was a second incident today, as you mentioned. There was earlier a stabbing attempt when basically a Palestinian had a knife drawn and was approaching IDF soldiers. He was then shot dead by border police soldiers who also saw the incident. And this is the kind of thing that has been happening in this area. Again, this has been the focus of much of the violence in this area in Gush Etzion and the surroundings of Hebron.
Yes, Shaban Ari, thank you very much for this. And Ali, you are here with me. Just before we're going to the bodies that were returned to the Palestinian Authority, to the Palestinians, I want to ask you, Israel's talking about security measures. We are seeing security measures being held on the ground and happening on the ground. But it seems that yet it's not stopping or blocking this wave of terror completely. Is there any plan B for if this is not going to work?
As long as you're talking about lone wolves, Lucy, I don't know whether there can be a plan B or plan C, because when a Palestinian, a teenager or an older, decide one morning to go and to stab a soldier and to hide a knife somewhere in his clothes, I don't know what plan can stop him from doing this, because as we mentioned before a serious initiative that will convince the Palestinian to call upon the Palestinian people and the Palestinian youth to give a chance to diplomacy and to the political initiative, I don't see this wave, how can it stop? In general, if we compare it to the beginning of late September, beginning of October, we can talk about somehow a reduce in the intensity of attacks, but yet there is everyday stabbing attacks.
One more thing, it seems that also ruining houses of terrorists is not actually threatening the other side, because if I saw what happened during during the weekend, one of the attackers, one of the terrorists, just wrote a letter to his father and told him, "I'm sorry for your house, the house is going to be ruined, but I really wanted to be a martyr, and this is what I want to do, but I'm sorry for what will happen."
It never stopped for two reasons, because when a person is determined to do so, he does the operation, one, and second, the day after, Palestinian NGOs and the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian factions gave back the family the money, and another house is built somewhere else. So this is the biggest nonsense that we can hear when you hear experts from the security establishment in Israel discussing about the whether it is the efficacy of this operation. Absolutely, this is totally nonsense. You had your house destroyed this Sunday. The next Sunday, you are in the Palestinian Authority discussing the amount of money that you receive in order to rebuild your house.
So I want to talk to you about the last, let's say, gesture, if we can call it, the Israeli gesture towards the Palestinian Authority returning the bodies of... Why Israel is keeping bodies of terrorists when you cannot actually take security information
because
from...
in the Islamic tradition, to bury the body is the most noble thing you can do to a person who is dead or killed. The Israeli thought to use this as a card to put pressure over the Palestinian, but the Israeli intelligence understood one important thing, that there are three main issues that might explode the situation once again. One, keeping the bodies. Second, massive demolishing of houses. And by the way, we are waiting to see whether the what will be the decision of the High Court in 3 days. It gave the state until November 4th to answer what is the efficacy of this tool, the demolishing of houses. And three, as far as Jerusalem is concerned, the confiscation, the massive confiscations of ID cards from the citizens of Jerusalem. One of these three issues, if it explodes, it is enough strong in order to bring us back to the situation of September, beginning of October.
Just one word in a small sentence, if you can, Ali, just to try to explain these images, this mass protest / funeral that we're seeing with Hamas flags and people are screaming, and this is not sending, let's say, a peaceful sign to Israel, who is watching what is happening in the West Bank.
Lucy, I don't know there is not a war between Palestinians and Israelis, but there is no peace between Palestinians and Israelis. And yet there are almost 4 million Palestinians seeking for an independent state. No initiative is seen in the horizon, whether from the region or from the international community. This is why the Palestinians understand that they are in a battle, in a struggle for independence. And for the moment, the stabbing is the tool that is the favorite tool for the Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority is still doing everything in order to stop an escalation from reaching from the knife to the Kalashnikov, from the knife to the suicide bombing attacks. The question is that until when the Palestinian Authority will have the motivation to make everything in order to prevent these attacks to happen.
Yeah, motivation or power to actually do it. Thank you very much, Ali Waqid, for this. And we're going right now to another disaster that occurred during the weekend. Investigation is underway after a Russian plane carrying 224 people crashed in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, killing everyone on board. Egypt's prime minister has dismissed claims by the Islamic State that it was behind the tragic incident, saying a technical fault was to blame. I-24 News correspondent Ur Shapira and Ayman Siksik have the story.
224 lives. This is the death toll of the latest attack claimed by the Islamic State in the downing of Russian airliner KGL 9268. The crash has left Russia and locals in the Sinai Peninsula, where the jet crashed, in shock, mainly because it has raised severe concerns over the security records of the Airbus jet involved. A jet from the A320 family takes off or lands every 2.5 seconds somewhere in the world. The questionable record of the crash jet means that the black box, now in Russian hands, is crucial to explaining the crash. For the city of St. Petersburg, where most of the victims originated from, answers cannot come soon enough.
The planes carrying bodies will arrive in Russia as soon as the Egyptian authorities make a decision.
Last night, the bodies arrived at a morgue in the Egyptian capital of Cairo for identification.
It's very important that this matter be left alone and that discussion of the reasons behind it should not take place, because this takes a very long time. These are complicated matters that require very advanced techniques and broad investigations that could take months.
Egyptian Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and Defense Minister Sedki Sobhi visited the crash site, saying that the plane could not have been down at such an altitude, and calling the IS claims into question. The claim was later supported by the Russians.
We attempted to connect the flight-free aviation sectors in Turkey, Greece and Russia after we lost connection with the plane, but all attempts failed. Later, we were told by Egypt that they had gotten in touch with the flight. Subsequently, they denied having said that.
But despite the rejection, some airlines, like Germany's Lufthansa and Air France, announced they will stop flying over the Sinai Peninsula. And as the investigation continues, relatives of the victims are still waiting for answers.
Yes, Ali Waqid, you're still with me for this, but just before, I want to say welcome to Ron Lapidot, aviation expert. Thank you very much for coming. Okay, let's start. Every time that I see such a crash, I start panicking, but what are really the chances that a plane can be dropped from the sky by a missile when it's 20 minutes after takeoff?
Yes. Well, in this occasion, none. Okay. No chances at all. This is ruled out by every aviation expert in the world because as far as everybody knows, ISIS doesn't have this type of missiles that could reach the height that the plane was flying at 33,000 feet, about 10 kilometers. Their shoulder missiles are about 4.5, 5 kilometers. They have a 4.5, 5 kilometers range. So even theoretically, they couldn't hit the plane and bring it down. But what else could have happened? There are two possibilities, actually, which are considered now by the investigative team. One of them is that it was a technical failure, maybe combined with a human error that brought down the plane. The other, that some sort of an explosive device or some sort of sabotage was done to the airplane while on ground in Sharm el-Sheikh. These are the two possibilities. You know that it happened before. Somebody could have taken a suitcase with explosive on board, or even do some sabotage to the system of some crucial system on the airplane when it reached certain height or certain time.
What are the chances that the plane was too old? Because they are talking about an 18-year-old plane, and at least I know that the El Al planes are 25 years old. So what are the chances that the plane is a little bit too old?
You gave the answer. 18 years for Airbus A321, the type of plane we're talking about, is not too old. These are modern planes designed in the 80s, very good planes with excellent record in all these years of flying. There are 6,200 planes of the 320 family. Every 2.5 seconds, it's taking off or landing somewhere in the world. And it's all this operation. Only one fatal accident happened in Islamabad in 2010, and that was a combination of bad weather and human error that brought the plane down, actually. So there is very slim chances, but we have the two black boxes, both of them, and they are inspected by teams from Russia and Egypt, and we'll know fairly soon.
In a short while, we're supposed to know the answers from the black box. Ali, what are the chances that actually ISIS has the capability to take down a plane?
Lucy, in the claim of responsibility of the Islamic State, they did not mention the way they helped this plane to crash. In their accounts on Twitter, the members of the Sinai province of the Islamic State, they are insisting that they had contributed to the crash of the plane, and in the very next future, they will be publishing the proof that will show that they were behind this operation.
It's correct, because until now, when ISIS published something, usually they were right.
Absolutely. For the moment, did not publish the evidence, but a couple of minutes before getting in the studio, the Russian team with the French team suggested for the first time, as far as I know, that the plane might have exploded while he is on air. They did not say he was targeted by a missile, but being on air, it has exploded. We know that the airport in Sharm el-Sheikh is in a region that is in the very strong tension, where the Islamic State have and the governance of Sinai have lots of influence, lots of members, and there is a bill between them and the Abdel Fattah Sisi regime to school.
Yes, we just we will say that Germany and I think France announced that they're not going to, that they're suspending the flights over the Sinai Peninsula for now. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for being with me in this part of the show. We are going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and I'll be back for the second part of the news today. Don't go anywhere. President Tayyip Erdogan's AK party heads to a single-party majority with a sweeping win in key Turkish elections. Violence continues in the West Bank with 2 separate attacks, the latest a vehicular incident north of Hebron in which 3 Israeli border police officers were injured. And an investigation is underway after a Russian airliner crashed in the Sinai Peninsula, killing all 224 people on board. Egypt and Russia authorities dismissed claims from Islamic State militants that they were responsible. Welcome back to the news today. In Syria, the Islamic State group continues to make gains as part of Homs province fall to jihadist hands. This even as a new U.S.-backed rebel alliance announced its first offensive against the Islamic group. I-24 News reporter Shah Ben Ari has more.
Although a range of forces are now arranged against them, Islamic State jihadists continue to make strides in some parts of Syria. By Sunday morning, the town of Mahin in Homs province had been overrun by IS militants after an attack had begun Saturday evening. Syrian opposition activists reported at least 50 regime soldiers were killed in the attack. Earlier Saturday, a new U.S.-backed alliance of Kurdish and Arab rebel groups calling itself the Democratic Forces of Syria announced an offensive against Islamic State in the country's northeast.
With the participation of all the factions and with support and coordination with the planes of the International Coalition to Fight the Islamic State, we announced the start of the liberation of the southern countryside of Hasaka. Our campaign will continue until all occupied areas in Hasaka are freed from the Islamic State terrorist organization.
American involvement in Syria has been in the spotlight recently, following the decision by the Obama administration to send nearly 50 special force troops to Syria, the first American soldiers to be sent on the ground there for a long-term assignment. While these troops are designated for an advisory role and are to be stationed at rebel headquarters far from the front lines, officials have said their mission could be modified according to developments in the fight against the Islamic State. The number of American soldiers on the ground could also be modified. Over the last 16 months, the U.S. troop presence in Iraq has climbed from 300 to 3,500, with one U.S. commando being killed last month during a hostage rescue operation. These days, plenty of countries are intervening in Syria. Arab media reports said Israeli planes struck targets in Syrian territory in the Kalamun region late Friday night, along the border with Lebanon. Among the sites hit were a facility belonging to Division 155 of the Syrian Army, which according to reports housed surface-to-surface Scud missiles. The reports also noted the strikes hit a weapons convoy and positions belonging to the Lebanese Hezbollah organization in Syria. Shiite Hezbollah militants are assisting the Assad regime in its fight against rebel forces. Planes reportedly fired their missiles from Lebanese airspace. It is not the first time Israel has been linked to strikes in Syrian territory.
We have very clear red lines regarding what's going on in Syria. The transfer of advanced weaponry to terrorist groups in Syria with an emphasis on Hezbollah, or the transfer of chemical weapons to terrorist groups. Those are the red lines that we protect. I don't confirm anything. I said, we are always the ones blamed, and we continue to protect our red lines.
In September, Israel and Russia agreed to coordinate their respective military operations in Syrian territory, which has now become a cauldron of violence and conflicting foreign interests.
And with me right now here in the studio, long time no seen, Avi Melamed, head of International and Middle East Affairs at the Eisenhower Institute. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Good to see you again, because I need you to explain to me what is that. Yeah. I need you to explain to me what is happening right now and how is the Syrian intervention is going to affect the, let's say, U.S. international coalition that is trying to intervene in what is happening or not happening in Syria.
I think what we are now watching in Syria is a very interesting phase. I think I was talking about it a couple of months ago already after the signing of the Vienna Agreement, and basically it seems like my prediction was accurate. What we see today is the beginning of a process that basically the major factors that are involved right now in the story in Syria, which are Assad, the Russians, the Iranians, the Syrian rebels, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and Europe, each and every one of them has its own interest to find some kind of like an arrangement on the ground. And basically what we see, or what we witnessed in the last couple of weeks, was the beginning of the attempts of the parts involved to try to find some common denominators. Obviously, they are now all focusing in the issue of Assad, whether he's going to stay or not going to stay. It's basically irrelevant to a large extent. But I think it's very interesting to see what will happen with that. And I think that's the direction generally.
So if this is the direction generally, like you're saying, how they're actually going to do that? Because it seems that each and every time that we're talking about the fact that Bashar al-Assad should or can or will leave his office, it seems that after months or after weeks, he's gaining more and more control on Syria.
You know, first of all, this is the Middle East. In the Middle East, there is always very productive ways to find solutions, sort of speaking. Just reminding you, a couple of weeks ago, for the first time ever since the events in Syria started, Assad left Syria and went where? To Russia.
To Russia.
And not to say that I was in the meeting, but I would like very much to be on that meeting. I have some kind of like a feeling that in that meeting, Mr. Putin explained Mr. Bashar al-Assad that in the end of the day, his options are narrowing down. That's my feeling, what was in that meeting.
He showed him the way out?
I would not be surprised if Mr. Putin basically explained Assad the facts of life. Assad knows that, this is Syria. Syria is a very long history of unfortunate incidents that happens to all kinds of people if they are insisting to stay in power. Assad knows that. There is a growing, by the way, discontent among the Alawites as well inside Syria. And we have to remember, Assad is coming from an Alawite Syrian family, which is not the biggest one. There are some other bigger families in the Alawites sect in Syria, and some of them are very not friendly with Assad family.
I'm trying to understand Bashar al-Assad, and you're trying to explain to me, maybe because I cannot read this guy in a very, very good way. But seeing what is happening in the Middle East, seeing what happened to Saddam Hussein, seeing what happened to Gaddafi, seeing what happened to Mubarak, how come he is insisting on staying in his position after he knows that he is blamed of killing and massacring thousands and thousands of people? So how come, or tens of thousands of people, how come he's still insisting to stay in his position?
By the way, the recent updates regarding the fatalities in Syria is more than 250,000.
250,000.
More than 250,000. Assad has been doing some very interesting psychological process. He started from a place saying, like, this is not a big issue, I'm going to take care of that. When things deteriorated in Syria, said, like, okay, my army can take care of that. When things go bad beyond that, he basically says, like, okay, me and my allies, Iran and the Hezbollah, we can take care of that. When that didn't work, he moved on to the next. Basically, he's saying today, well, I have Russia in my back. If you have Russia in your back, you should look back very carefully.
But even when he says about Hezbollah, even we heard Hassan Nasrallah giving a speech just months ago. I never, I think, heard Hassan Nasrallah so uncertain in his place, in his position, in his fight, in a certain period of time. It seems that even there, Hassan Nasrallah understands that he cannot continue backing Assad for a long time.
I wouldn't like to be in Mr. Nasrallah's shoes. Mr. Nasrallah is facing an increasing criticism inside the Shiite sect in Lebanon. He sustained heavy casualties and fatalities in Syria. Every day that goes by, he's sinking. By the way, there were a couple of indicators that Mr. Nasrallah, physically speaking, is like gaining a lot of weight. Some people say that when you are in stress and oppressed, you tend to eat a lot. Maybe that's the explanation.
I hope that he's not eating Ben & Jerry's a lot.
Ben & Jerry's is wonderful ice cream.
Avi Melamed, thank you very much for this.
My pleasure, Lucy.
Moving to Somalia, at least 15 people were killed after Shabab Islamists attacked a hotel in Mogadishu. Gunmen used a car packed with explosives to blast their way into the Sahafi Hotel. Among the victims is one MP and a general who led an offensive against Shabab in 2012. The I-24 News Desk has the story.
At least 15 people were killed in the Somali capital Mogadishu on Sunday when gunmen used a vehicle packed with explosives to blast their way inside a hotel. The Al-Qaeda-linked Shabab claimed responsibility for the dawn attack at the Sahafi Hotel, which is popular with members of parliament, government employees and businessmen. Reports indicate the victims included one MP and General Abdikarim Dagabadan, who led the 2011 operation that drove al-Shabaab out of the capital. African Union troops say they have regained control over the building. Shabab insurgents who are fighting to overthrow the internationally backed government in Mogadishu have carried out a string of attacks on hotels in the capital. The group has frequently used car bombs driven by suicide bombers to break into a complex or a building, with gunmen then storming in on foot. The militants have also carried out massive deadly attacks in neighboring countries in recent years. But this week, Somalia President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed called on Shabab fighters to surrender. This amid reports some factions may have shifted allegiance from Al-Qaeda to the Islamic State group after losing territory and having some of their leaders killed by regular U.S. drone strikes. It seems, however, that these recent attacks claimed by the group are meant to challenge claims that they are any close to defeat.
And we are now joined over Skype by Andrew Green from Kampala, Uganda, a freelance journalist who covers affairs in East Africa. Good evening, Andrew. Good to see you.
You too, thanks.
So, Andrew, this is the revenge from 2012?
Well, this is just al-Shabaab's way of reminding the world, international leaders in the region that they're still heavily armed, very well funded, still active, and that they can carry out these kinds of attacks when and if they want to.
Yes, so if we're talking about the power that al-Shabaab have, do they have a big power in this region, or this is again just a small reminder?
Well, I think it's a mixture of both, really. What we've seen is that the AU force that's on the ground and is supposed to be weeding out al-Shabaab really just doesn't have the strength to overcome all of the forces that are available. They're consistently able to regroup, to retreat, and then to launch these kinds of attacks. So they're at least capable of doing that, and they have the strength to do that. Whether they can regain full control of Mogadishu as they had in 2011 seems unlikely. But clearly they still have enough foot soldiers and enough weapons to continue to destabilize the country.
Andrew, how does Somalia right now deals with this terror until now?
Well, I think they're really just dependent on the AU forces. They have these entrenched government in Mogadishu, and the land that is available to that government continues to expand and retract as these forces are able to gain and control it. But then we see attacks like today, attacks like happened last month when Ugandan troops were overrun, and earlier in June when Burundian troops were overrun. So, we're just seeing this ebb and flow and inconstant ability to really control all of Somalia.
I'm trying to think, with so many terror groups trying to contest over the premiership, we're talking about ISIS, and we're talking about Boko Haram, and we're talking about Al-Qaeda. What, is this another way of al-Shabaab to rise above all and say, hey, we are also here, just pay attention to us?
Yes, very much. I mean, they're all looking for resources. They're all looking for recruits. This is a way for al-Shabaab to remind the international community that it is active, that it does have a mission, and that it's not going away anytime soon. And when they wreak the kind of devastation that they did today, it does send a signal to the rest of the world that they are a force that still needs to be reckoned with.
Yes, Andrew Green, thank you very much for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
The leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China have agreed to completely restore trade and security ties after meeting for the first time in 3 years. The talks were held in the South Korean capital of Seoul and are considered to be a major step forward for the three countries, who have a long-running history of disputes over history and territory. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg has more.
With tensions over the sensitive situation in the South China Sea hovering above them, leaders of South Korea, Japan, and China began a three-way summit Sunday aimed at boosting economic cooperation, but which could potentially lead to the strengthening of diplomatic relations as well.
We have agreed to accelerate discussing the trilateral free trade agreement and work together for the conclusion of the regional comprehensive economic partnership.
Up until 2012, this was an annual gathering, but it was suspended due to increasing diplomatic tensions, namely over what China and South Korea claim as Japan's reluctance to face up its World War II atrocities.
We agreed to handle sensitive matters, including that of history, properly by facing history squarely, while advancing towards the future.
It's a breakthrough for the region and the three countries, Japan, South Korea, and China, that we hold this trilateral summit for the first time in 3.5 years.
The model of promoting economic relations prior to any other cause is a well-rooted principle among Southeast Asian nations. Since its inception, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations have made economic matters the top priority, alongside the key objective of non-interference in each other's domestic affairs. Now, the three leading countries in the association will try to do the same, while tiptoeing between a handful of flashpoints: China's assertive expansion in the South China Sea, Japan's close ties with the U.S., and North Korea's aggression, to promote peace through economic harmony.
I-24 News correspondent Ur Shapira took a look at a new exhibition open in Engel Gallery, Tel Aviv, which presents for the first time sketches from the trial of Yigal Amir, the murderer of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. Let's have a look.
Courtroom sketches are mostly not considered an art form, but rather as a procedure to document a trial when cameras are not allowed inside the courtroom. However, this specific exhibition is quite different. After nearly 20 years, Israeli artist Jacques Jeannot is displaying sketches from the trial of Yigal Amir, who assassinated Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin in 1995, in a new exhibition entitled Beside the Witness Stand, which recently opened at the Engel Gallery, Tel Aviv.
Of course, when we're talking about feelings, everybody can take it to a different place, because politics has nothing to do with art. And everybody can see something else. I have people who come in here and, you know, they say, I can't look at it. It makes me scared. It makes me angry. It brings emotions, and that's what art needs to do. It needs to bring out emotions.
As some of the sessions of Amir's trial were held behind closed doors, Jeannot has the responsibility of providing some of the only evidence from inside the courtroom of one of the most covered trials in Israel and beyond. Sitting in a courtroom with one of the most hated men in Israel made this ordinary clerical task difficult. However, Jeannot says he saw it as a regular job.
I was totally natural and objective. I just wanted to be a good artist and to see the picture as wide as it is.
One of the most significant sketches in this collection shows Amir in a human light, and not as the villain he appears in other pictures.
It's like he was sitting in front of me by the National Gallery, and I'm just making his portrait, and I'm waiting for him to finish, to say, he looks like me, and give me £5. Also, the way I did it, also with the white and a little bit with the shade, try to look like as he is.
On March 27, 1996, Amir was sentenced to life imprisonment. Nearly 20 years later, one image has remained etched in the collective Israeli memory, that of the young assassin laughing in court.
Yes, and with me right now here in the studio is I-24 News correspondent Ori Shapira. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Ori, you know, we were just talking, and I'm telling you, I don't remember this trial. I remember him sitting in the courtroom. I don't remember the trial. And I'm just hearing Engel saying, you come to, and it makes you feel angry, it makes you feel frustrated, it makes you feel sad. Why did you go there?
Well, you know, I was old enough to witness the murder of Yitzhak Rabin. I also saw the trial in real time, but I don't remember much of the trial either. I think years after, we didn't see much footage from the trial, and I think the Israeli public didn't want to see the trial. They didn't want to see Yigal Amir. I think there was a process of rejecting the image of Amir, the story of Amir. People mostly focused on Rabin and his story.
What, people didn't want to see the person behind the beast, behind the monster that killed the prime minister?
I think what shook me mostly in this exhibition was that you can see the human side of Yigal Amir. After all, he was a human being. He wasn't a monster. He was just like any of us.
But it's a monster. You know, we are talking 20 years. This exhibition is coming 20 years after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. We are talking about a person that maybe changed the course of history here in Israel. And yet, I don't know how I would feel if I will go to an exhibition. I think that I will be very sad, but very angry and sad. But watching him in a human way, it's I don't know. It's like asking if he should be released or we can see him released in the future?
It's a difficult question, of course. And, you know, in 2001, the Israeli parliament passed a law that prohibits him from being released. In 2004, he got married, and in 2005, he gave birth to a child. And, you know, there were some forces that tried to prevent him from doing that. And it's an ethical question, I think, whether he should be treated like any other prisoner.
You know, one question that I have for you, and this is something that I'm asking myself also, would you be interested in interviewing him?
Of course. Like any other journalist, I think it's a fascinating story. I like to see, you know, his mind.
Because I don't know.
To see his motives.
Because I would think that really I would like to give the stage to the Prime Minister's assassinate, to the Prime Minister's murderer. I don't know. This is something that...
It will definitely be difficult for me to sit in front of him, but I think there's a lot of questions that I like to ask him.
Tell me one.
Why? Why did he do that?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Rory Shapira. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry met with Uzbekistan President Islam Karimov on Sunday as part of his 5-day tour of Central Asia. The two focused on extending economic ties and also discussed closer cooperation in the ongoing battle against the Islamic State group. The meeting took place as ministers from other Central Asian countries gathered for their first talks. The new format, dubbed the C5+1, is expected to become a forum for cooperation between Washington and the so-called stans. And in the race to the White House, representatives of several Republican candidates are meeting privately in a Northern Virginia hotel to discuss possible reforms to future GOP debates. This after candidates came together at a forum in Iowa with many slamming debate moderators for their questions during previous debates. ABC News' Gloria Riveras has the story.
Back on the trail and venting their frustration.
Here's what frustrates me.
All they did was ask us about fantasy football, for gosh sakes.
How about we stop letting left-wing liberals moderate Republican debates?
I'm supposed to be catering to the press. The hell with the press.
Republican candidates for president still airing their anger over the last debate, unsatisfied by the questions and the moderators. Now they are demanding changes for future face-offs.
We're on the verge of seeing chaos. They don't agree. I mean, Donald Trump wants to have shorter debates. That's all he wants. Ben Carson wants to have fewer debates. The other candidates want to have more debates.
Tomorrow, representatives from all the campaigns are set to meet in Washington to discuss strategy. Leading the charge, Dr. Ben Carson.
Debates are supposed to be established to help the people get to know the candidates. What it's turned into is a gotcha.
So far, the time of Sunday's big meetup is out, but the exact location still a mystery.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
On the Democratic side of the trail, candidates Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders focusing on early voting states. Clinton even had some Halloween fun, meeting a mini doppelganger during her rally in South Carolina. In New Hampshire, rival Bernie Sanders had to take his rally outside after the crowd became too large. Both parties vying to keep the campaigns on message. Gloria Riviera, ABC News, Washington.
And with me right now, this smile means that with me right now is Jonathan Rega.
The man who brings the smiles.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All good.
All good. Yes.
You saw the rugby.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and?
I love New Zealand and I love Australia, so either way I would have been happy. The All Blacks, the Kiwis are the happy ones, and they should be. They won 34-17, and the bars in Auckland and Wellington and Christchurch and Dunedin. I just love to brag on the fact that I was there a long time ago. People were celebrating all night. As I told you, the game began at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Shai Yakir is yelling in my ear, me too, me too, me too.
Yes,
okay.
yes. That was also a long time ago. So was I. In the 20th century it was. And they should be very, very happy. I envy them for being the world champions in the sport they love.
I don't understand the sports. Okay. Let's move to Kansas City, Baseball World Series.
Do you understand baseball? Which
yes.
I love too, but...
Yes, baseball I understand better than men slamming each other with a ball.
All right, well, never mind. Baseball, the fans in Kansas City may be joining the fans in New Zealand because they're very, very close. Why are you laughing? To winning the World Series. The Royals are up 3-1 against the Mets after winning Game 4, 5-3, which means they're up 3-1. Game 5 is in just a few hours, again in Citi Field in New York. If the Royals win it, they'll be the world champions. If the Mets happen to win it, then the series will go back to Kansas City for either one game or two. The Royals look good. They're up 3-1. They will probably win it, although the Mets, they're fighters. They're not going to give it up easy.
You see, this I understand.
Throwing balls, hitting it with a bat.
Yes, I understand.
Yes, There's a lot to rugby, but you have to watch it.
One ball in singular. Insane motorcycle race in Abu Dhabi.
Yes, in Abu Dhabi, that's what happened there over the weekend. Not only athletes whose flag was not shown, but also the X-Fighters World Tour. That's what it's called. Basically, as you can see, motorcyclists climbing up all these insane mud bowls over there and just rising up to the air. Here, if we can see it, basically what they do is they come and yes.
This is
They do it out of their own will.
I don't understand that. You see, I don't understand that. It's like I saw some moves that you do when you're going down the stairs. You don't do that.
Yes, Clinton Moore, by the way, that's the name of the winner. There we see him, and yeah, I would not do that even walk down the stairs, as you have said.
You see,
it's beautiful, by the way.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's really why. And with all this noise, and I don't understand.
Because
you
they
see,
can.
Rugby, I understand better than that.
me too, by the way. But it's insane. I would love to be able to do that, but I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay, just if you want to see more from Jonathan Regev, he's just going to replace me.
Stay tuned.
And stay tuned with him, because he's going to give you some updates about the latest news just came into our news desk with Jonathan Regev. Yeah, and that's it. I'm going, and I'll be back after Jonathan Regev.
I'll be
back. Yes. Welcome back to the news today. In Israel, following Israeli Economy Minister Aryeh Deri's resignation on Sunday, Israel is now free to move forward with a massive gas deal. The deal will see Noble Energy and its Israeli partner Delek develop the Leviathan offshore gas field in the Mediterranean Sea. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Eli Ochenberg with the story.
The disappearing minister. It's not a Houdini trick, but a Netanyahu one.
Minister Deri informed me of his intention to resign from the Economy Ministry in order to allow for the completion of the proceedings. The ministry will revert to me, and I will authorize the outline.
Aryeh Deri, the just resigned economy minister, whose election slogan was "in the name of the transparent ones," meaning the lower class, was the final obstacle to the impending mega gas deal with the U.S. energy giant Noble Energy. By becoming invisible, namely by resigning and giving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu his ministerial authority, in addition to the foreign affairs post he already holds, Deri has ensured that the controversial multi-billion-dollar deal can now go ahead. This major agreement, which has been stuck for almost a year now, is, in its simplest form, aimed at exploiting Israel's offshore gas reserves. By approving it, the control over Israel's largest gas field, Leviathan, will be left to Noble Energy and its local partner Delek in exchange for scaling back their involvement in the currently operational smaller Tamar field and the Tanin and Karish fields. But officials, including the antitrust commissioners, have been highly critical of this deal, warning it would potentially give this consortium an effective monopoly. Netanyahu, for his part, stresses that this agreement will be a serious boost to the Israeli economy.
Natural gas will be the #1 growth engine in Israel in the coming years. We are talking about an investment of very many billions of dollars already over the next 2 years, and the creation of related industries, which will provide many jobs for the citizens of Israel.
To this already tangled equation, add a high-profile visit which is receiving attention: Bill Clinton, the former U.S. president. The official cause of the visit, the 20th memorial ceremony of the murder of former Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. The visit, however, was also loudly slammed by critics of the gas deal due to the simple fact Clinton is also a lobbyist for Noble Energy.
Yeah. And with me right now here in the studio is Eli Ochenberg, I-24 News diplomatic correspondent. Good evening.
Good evening.
And also Dr. Alex Coleman of the Academic College of Tel Aviv. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, let's be positive. What is the good thing in this deal?
The good thing is that you can smell the gas at the end of the tunnel, and you can actually believe that in the near future we will take advantage of this gas. It will not stay buried there.
This is the only good thing. We are not, as the people of Israel, going to gain anything from it.
It's a very easy question, so there's only one good thing about it, because the stench associated with all the corruption and lack of process is much bigger than the good news.
Okay, so let's be negative. What are the bad things in this deal?
The bad things, you see, in economics, money is of course important, but also the feeling of people in a country, whether if it's corrupt. This is a major. Causes major damage to the economy, because if you're in the economy and you're under the impression that people are taking bribes or things or people are getting advantages, you will become corrupt as well, and this will destroy the economy.
Yeah, but we are talking about this very rich guy who decides to take from his own money. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely,
okay?
yeah.
And go and drill in the sea and find this gas and actually make benefit or drill for us to find the gas. And
God bless him. Absolutely. Hallelujah.
Until now it's okay, because he has the money that we don't have to do it.
Yeah, and
so
he's
what
lucky.
is the bad thing? And I'm trying to understand. What is the bad thing with him gaining money from it?
Okay, you have standards over this planet. How much money belongs to the state and how much money belongs to this extremely charming person who found the gas, okay? So we must divide it. Now, usually on the planet, we see that the country takes some like 60%, more than that, and the people who exploit it take less than that, unless there is corruption.
And what is the deal supposed to say? It's supposed to say that who is going to take what share.
Exactly. And moreover, for instance, we promise a cent price for the gas, but you have a global market for gas. So why should we determine the price of it? We do not determine the price of oil, right? Yeah. Whatever it is, that's what we're going to pay with some extra. That's what I expect to see with the gas.
Explain to me in really, really, really simple words.
Yes.
It means, like, for example, I got a cake. Okay, I found a cake that nobody else found in the world.
And no, not exactly. There are many cakes in the world, but of course it's expensive to bring them from abroad.
A special cake, and I found it here.
There's nothing special about your cake. It's the same lousy cake you can buy all over the planet, only it's cheaper because it's right here on the beach rather than having to bring it from far away.
Okay, so if it's the same lousy cake, why we are not gaining anything
First of all,
from it?
I'm not daring even to call your cake a lousy one. You're a brave man. No, but you can't discuss money without discuss politics. And those discoveries occurred back in 2009, 2010. But ever since we had a handful of bureaucratic delays. There were deals negotiated with Jordan and Egypt, multi-billion dollars of deals that were put on hold because of those bureaucratic delays. And then you can add to this casserole the largest ever discovery of gas in the Mediterranean, the Egyptian discovery, and then Israel feared that it will be left behind. So Netanyahu, maybe similarly to the Iran deal, if you want, it's better to have a deal urgently than not having a deal at all.
So let's try to understand what just happened, because Aryeh Deri, the head of Shas party, the Orthodox party, just resigned from his office, and he was the one that stopped the deal from being signed in the last few months. What is happening today that he is clearing the way, giving this office to Benjamin Netanyahu, and then what exactly? Benjamin Netanyahu becomes the economy minister, and he can sign as well. And we will talk about it as well. And then he can sign the deal, and everything will be okay.
Well, the favorable way initially was to pass a certain vote in Parliament that says that the antitrust commissioner's responsibility or authority will pass to the cabinet. But Netanyahu has a very thin government, and he didn't have enough votes to pass such a deal. So he had to turn to the other way and convince Deri to sign the infamous Article 52, which hands him the authority of the antitrust commissioner, which he declined to do. So Netanyahu was left with no choice to offer Deri, if you want, a certain bribe, giving him another ministry where he could excel and do great things for his voters. He will will be in charge now on the Negev and the Galilee area, the periphery. He can do really great things for his audience of voters. And now he has the authority and he can do whatever he wants with the economy portfolio.
Let's talk about the fact that the Prime Minister of Israel is holding right now 3 different ministries.
In addition to being Prime Minister.
In addition to being
more
a Prime
than enough.
Minister. How dangerous it is for a country that the Prime... Dangerous or not, I don't know, for a country that the Prime Minister is also the Foreign Minister, is also the Economy Minister, and also the Communication Minister.
Right, and in charge of regional cooperation, and he used to be the Health Minister as well.
But he handed over the Health Minister.
He was forced by the Supreme Court. He did not do it of his own will.
We are talking about 3 different offices that there are major reforms are going to happen there. We're talking about the economy, which is the gas deal. We're talking about the Communication Ministry, that we're talking about the reform in Channel 1, the big channel, the Israeli Public Channel, and Channel 2, of course. And we're talking about the Foreign Ministry, about the reforms that are going, which is always reforms are happening there. How dangerous is this?
First of all, I mean, if you're talking about risk management, this is very dangerous in the sense that all these reins are held in the hands of one man, and if something happens to him, then you would assume that chaos would take over. Now, in reality, Netanyahu does not take over these ministries because he has some vision, because he wants to drive something. He takes over these ministries because he wants to control. He wants to be on the brakes and make sure that nothing happens that's against his will. And this is something very weird. Is it that weird, or in a let's say very narrow government, it's very understandable?
First of all, it is understandable because, as we see, he cannot do many things he wants to do because of this razor-thin government. I must mention that the Yesh Atid party from the opposition already announced it is going to appeal to the Supreme Court because of this multiple portfolios he's holding. But if I'm trying to think like Netanyahu, maybe he knows that at the end of the day, as the premier of this government, he will be trashed for any failure of his ministers. So.
And
why not being them?
Let's not forget that Yair Lapid also, it was published that he got an offer from the Prime Minister to join the government. But if we're looking, did Aryeh Deri, the head of Shas, the Orthodox Party, the former ex-economy minister, really had a chance to stay there and do something, or he didn't want the responsibility?
The Shas agenda, Deri's party, has always been very, leftist in its social matters. He believes in equality. He believes in a strong welfare system for his voters and citizens of Israel in general. But everybody gains from the fact that gas or economy is not a sexy issue to deal with, and most of the Israeli citizens do not understand the technicalities of such moves. And what happens at the end is that we hear the same parliament members or the same left-wing voices uproaring about every single thing, and it becomes like a back nose and not something.
To be honest here, I don't understand really this deal. I don't understand until now what me as a citizen of the state of Israel is going to gain for it or not to gain from it.
You're going to gain cheap gas, which is important because, for instance, they give the example of glass manufacturers who are using a lot of energy, and so they will have cheaper gas. They'll be able to be competitive. But because Deri wants to provide employment, you would expect to see in such a contract commitment by the project to employ Israelis. I mean, you see this all over the world. Every country that has a natural resource says you're not just going to bring in other people and exploit it. You're going to use our people.
One sentence about the involvement of the United States in this.
Well, the United States, I don't like their involvement, but every country tries to take advantage of its negotiation power, and actually they squeezed Netanyahu's hand and forced him some noble. Yeah, Noble Energy went and wept in the U.S., and the U.S. told Netanyahu that if he was to change the conditions, then they would go to the international court, and it would smell bad.
Noble Energy is even stronger than the White House.
It's just like if we have enough things to worry about, now we have a bigger balagan mess in
And the
Israel.
word noble, of course, does not fit here anywhere in the conversation.
Just love the way that you... just before you're going, let's join live from Hebron for the recent updates from what is happening here in the region. I-24 News military correspondent Shai Ben Ari, he is in Gush Etzion. Shai, the latest updates.
Yes, well, the Israeli army has confirmed that a man has turned himself in to authorities in relation to that incident which happened a little over 5 hours ago near the entrance to Beit Hanun with a vehicular attack that injured 3 border police officers. A man turned himself into the civil administration offices in the city of Hebron in relation to that incident and has now been transferred to interrogation. It is not clear exactly what he has told his interrogators. That may become clear later on. I'll just mention there have been a series of incidents in the past few months in this area where incidents were unclear if it was actually an accident or an attack. In this case, I would say it is unlikely that we're not talking about an attack because of the amount of incidents that we've seen in this region. There were 2 just at the entrance to Beit Hanun today, of course. So I'm not sure that we're talking about an accident in this case, but that has happened before. And indeed, there's often a lot of confusion when you talk about this sort of incident.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the fact that, let's say, the tension was focused in Jerusalem, and now we're seeing that the tension just passed to the West Bank. Any coordination or shifted to the West Bank? Any coordination between the security forces and the Israeli security forces and the Palestinians?
Coordination at a limited level does exist even now. That is worthy of note, of course, but of course the situation has been better when you talk about the relationship between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli security services. It has not been cut off despite certain threats by the Palestinian Authority, but really when it comes to the security work on the ground, in terms of these kinds of incidents, most of the work is done by the Israeli security services, and it's still not too much is being done, it has to be said, regarding popular protests, regarding the riots that break out at the entrance to Beit Hanun and other areas in the surroundings of Hebron, for example. The Palestinian security services are not too active in preventing those kinds of actions, but in this case, again, a man did turn himself into the Israeli security services, the civil administration office in the city of Hebron.
Yes. Shai Ben Ari, thank you very much for this update. And that's it. Thank you, Eli Ochenberg and Alex Coleman, for being with me. And that's it for tonight. We are finishing with live footage from Ankara, from Istanbul, Turkey, where, yeah, the AK party just sweepingly swept the elections in Turkey. Until tomorrow, have a great night.
جهان السلام